Hey there, YouTube. How are you this evening? Preemptively, good luck with your pulls tonight for the people that are pulling for Kam'lanaut. I'm sure that's most people, myself included. I would go to the screen to show you how I have mine kitted out already, but I'm not going to do that because that is a lot of effort at a time where the game is likely to start bugging out and being ultra laggy at any moment. So I'm not going to. I did not mean to click that. However, what I'm going to do here tonight is I'm actually going to combine the pulls with the when you pull because I intentionally did not release it already. So here's what you need to know. On this banner, you've got Cam's FR, you've got Cecil, you've got Palom, and you've got Rosa. Now, Rosa here is only going to be getting her force levels, so she has no rework, nothing new. Palom, he does get a rework, he gets a C90 here. It can essentially be described as, this is a damage rework. All of his skills now have, I think it's 4 HP attacks attached to them. So skill 1, skill 2, EX, and LD. His HP plus is also better. It's got 3 and gives increased recast on his already super fast EX. However, the problem with Palom, and this is the kind of, I'm not going to tell you to avoid him, but he's not really someone you're going to want to use. The problem with his character is that he, much like Lightning, functions very heavily around breaking enemies and then taking a free turn afterwards. Ignoring the fact that sometimes enemies might not be breakable, and so you can't take those free turns, which I know a lot of people sort of levied as criticism of King, which is fine. The problem is that unlike King, Palom's only doing 4 HP attacks per turn. King is 6 or 7, right? And while that was fine when Palom's LD originally released, where the turn counts were low, and you needed a bunch of damage, and it needed to be AoE or at least splash, force time is specifically a place where, unless you're doing lots of HP attacks on those turns, it's not going to do as well. Like, you could take 2 turns with Palom, and yes, you could satisfy the conditions for the FR that you're using, or you could take 1 turn with one character and satisfy it, and then another turn with another character, both of whom might have, for example, 5 HP hits, so they're going to do more damage, and that is, it's small, but it is important if you're trying to optimize. Cecil, also, it's mostly a damage increase for his rework. All of his skills, all of his buttons have been brought up to current standards in terms of the number of HP attacks they have, which, interesting pattern here, starting with his brave attack, or his brave command, excuse me, which I think is called Light Slash. It now has an HP attack attached to it, but in order you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So brave, HP, skill 1, skill 2. That's how many HP attacks they have on the buttons. His skills, I believe he gets more uses, and they have refunds in between them. Thank you. My phone just started vibrating. I need to turn off my notifications. Thank you for reminding me of that. His EX is 5 HP attacks, and he does get some personal damage buffs. The damage buffs that he has get improved. And I believe his defense aura also gets improved. He's got buff start for his LD, so you don't have to immediately use it to get that overhead effect. And his Holy Enchant C65 does last longer. So basically, Cecil is doing a lot more damage than he used to, but he's still not churning out tons and tons of damage. At this point in time, unless you're using LD and EX basically every turn during force time, 5 is a little low. Some people might say that that's not necessarily fair, and okay, but if you compare that to, for example, Kane, press skill 2, Kane does 7, or if you have Kane up in the air, it's 2 every single turn, regardless of whose turn it is. I don't know. Cecil's Burst Plus, he actually gets that now, and it's essentially increased, I think it's Brave damage cap and HP damage cap, while your party's HP is above 100%. This is fine, but the conditional kind of, at least for me, I think the conditional makes it a little less worth your resources, because in Shinryu there are more HP attacks that are coming at you, at least a little more frequently. HP poison isn't super uncommon as a force gauge effect, so you're going to have to work a little bit harder to stay at that threshold, which is fine. It's just when this is your burst, you may not necessarily want to go that route. It's easier to use a burst that's got a more consistent effect. Again, and I hate to make this comparison, as long as Kane's burst effect is active, you're getting 30% party HP cap up, you're getting brave damage up, and all of the other stuff. And you don't have to satisfy any condition. Also, it lasts longer. Cecil's BT effect gets a 2-turn increase, so it's at 6. So Cecil is fine. I just don't think that for most people he's going to be really worth the investment here. So basically this banner, you could probably comfortably skip it. As for the other one, we've got Cater, who gets force levels, no rework or anything like that. Kamari, who does get C90 and a rework. And then Kam'lanaut, who gets a pretty sizable rework with his C90. Kamari, basically everything he does, he gets more damage. Pretty standard. His EX, this is important, his EX debuff now does last for 2 turns instead of just 1. So it's way easier to cycle, EX and then the LD HP plus to get the free EX proc and stuff like that. And that is still instant turn. However, his damage is still super, super low. Skill 1 is, I believe, 4. It's either 3 or 4 HP attacks. Skill 2 is 2, though it is full AoE. His LD is 3. His EX is 3. So his damage is actually lower than Palom's. I'd say it's roughly on par with Cecil's, maybe a little bit lower. He does still have good utility, but he still doesn't have brave gains or anything like that. There are bosses with guaranteed hit attacks. There's just not enough to really recommend Kamari to anybody, if that makes sense. Outside of some very, very specific setups. During force time, if your enemy doesn't hit you, yeah, that works great for Edge and Galuf, but it does nothing for Orin or Gladiolus or Beatrix, all of whom require your party members to get hit, and they are very, very strong characters. He's a sort of defensive support who, he's great. He's good for mitigating damage, for healing your party, and things like that, but when you're looking for damage, this is not where you would go. And that is kind of where you want to be right now, is try and get more damage. So Kamari, not the best. Kam'lanaut, however, he gets a pretty huge rework, because the last time he had any action was when he got his LD boards with Paladin Cecil's LD release, I believe. So his Brave, however many pluses it is, now sets the enemy's Brave to 0 before you use it, so it's basically a guaranteed break if they have any Brave at all. I'm pretty sure it's instant turn when you break them, and it obviously sets up his skill 1, the plus version, which is guaranteed paralysis. all of his buttons do more damage, more HP attacks. The paralysis from skill 1 is now AoE, which is super nice. It's way more consistent. I would say he's probably he's either the first or second best lockdown character in the game at this point. Skill 2, again, more HP attacks. And I believe when you use skill 2, it transforms it takes skill 1 to the plus version automatically, I believe. It's been a while since I've used him. EX, still full AoE. It now has a better recast. Deals way more damage. It's like 5 HP attacks or something like that. Full AoE, which is how you know that Kimahri's EX is copium. He does start with his LD buff now, or his overhead, excuse me. So you don't have to immediately use it, which is nice. It still has the free skill. The aura from, I think it's the overhead. They actually increased it so it decreases enemy attack / magic attack a bit more. His burst, which, at least for me, is the main star of this show here tonight, has a bunch of different things attached to it, including party, HP cap up, and brave gains. But it also has an interesting effect where, as long as it's up, whenever one of your characters attacks an enemy, it inflicts a framed debuff that is, it's an AoE, it does an AoE, it's a paralysis debuff that when it expires, and it only lasts for 1 turn, but when it expires, it automatically warps the party member who would have the next turn. It warps them up immediately after, so it's kind of similar to Realm or Eldmarsh. Nothing off of that. I am going to be going gems here. His FR, as I'm sure everyone knows, 20% increase when you do ice brave damage, which is applied once per turn. And as far as I know, it doesn't work for off-turn attacks. Second, and this is kind of where it's acknowledged that he is literally broken because unintended interactions. I actually do like the look of this gun, by the way. The second FR condition is when you, I suppose a simple way to put it, when you do an HP attack against an enemy who cannot act. Now because his BT applies a paralysis debuff, this should basically be proccable every turn as long as the BT effect is up. But it works during launches as well. So standard setup is going to be, you know, a Rain's Call or a selfie, something like that. And you either enchant someone else who's kind of trying to take all the turns. This is why Titus is so popular, because he does that, and he has lots of HP attacks. Or you have Cam drive it, which you can do pretty easily with his own burst phase. You pop the BT plus finisher, then the FR. Anyway, so you set it up so that you have Ice Enchant up, and then you do full party launches, and you're looking at plus 80% every turn. That's actually an interesting pull, and that would have been really good back in the day, because that's the Cam starter kit. Long story short, they really messed up by allowing this interaction to remain in the game. I assume they haven't nerfed it here for global, although I truly hope that they do. Just remember that it does take a lot of... I did not have Cater's LD. There are a lot of pieces that you need to make Cam's FR work. So if you are a newer player, it might not be the best choice for you. Because there are no launch characters or ice enchanters that are currently available on banners. So you really shouldn't expect this to, you know, be your savior. You make it work though, I'm sure. I imagine he's a perfectly playable character normally. I was really, actually very unhappy. When this came around on JP, I did not manage to get his burst. I got his FR, but not the burst. And I didn't have the tokens for it. So I've never gotten to use him, you know, full kit. The FR interaction, it's very strong. So much so that it was what kicked off power creep in Shinryu, essentially. It's something that if you want your path of least resistance, it's very clearly the way to go. Because you take that, and even if you don't have his FR, the most common abuser of this would be Titus with his burst, which when you max it, you obviously use the BT finisher, then you go into his burst phase, and he's using shot twice at the end of each of his attacks after doing, you know, however many HP attacks during his skills and a launch. So you're getting tons and tons and tons of damage off of him, turn after turn after turn. It is not necessary to use that to clear content. You can absolutely do it without. But again, that is probably the path of least resistance for a bit. However, don't make the mistake of thinking that this is all you're going to need to make it through Shinryu. You can only ride that train for so long, you know. That being said, I don't think there are all that many fights that lock this out. Let's see. I don't think there's that many bosses that are launch immune. I can only think of one off the top of my head that's immune to paralysis specifically. And even that one you can get around with a Waka LD call. So, you know. Something I did forget to mention for the other characters though, is their FR coverage. If you wanted to use Cecil, he's probably the best option, because I actually did make some notes here for this, although it's starting to make my game bug out. There we go. Right, press the pull. There we go. His kit does have a lot of coverage in it. It's got melee and range damage, which can be good or bad. Holy. It's got modified brave and HP attacks that can battery the party, which you'll see with stuff like Charlotta and Aerith. Single target and AoE attacks. He's got a pretty good split on that, as far as like his big damage buttons. Man. He does have an overhead effect, which can tick, there's a few different FRs that look for that. And he does have HP regen. So I think one of the better FRs that you could use him with probably would be Lude, or even Aroha, who wants people to be at 100% HP. But those are both like kind of general. They're what I would call a generalist FR, because it's a condition that lots and lots of characters can meet really easily, and that particular character helps you with doing that pretty much the whole time. So, you know. I don't know. I really and truly, my opinion, I don't really think the other characters on these banners are worth an investment, and I think that if you're looking to use Kam'lanaut just to sort of cheese your way through content, I mean, that's all well and good, and, you know, if that's what you want to do, more power to you. But do give consideration to what's going to happen when suddenly you can't use that strategy anymore. A big thing in Shinryu is learning how to play the stages, learning how to adjust, learning how to optimize your force time, while still, you know, mitigating enemy mechanics and things like that. Man, these pulls are pretty ass. So we're at LD pity now. But we're not done yet. It is kind of sad to see this go this way because I have been hella on the Cam train for a while. There's a reason why I pulled for him in JP when he originally came out, and it wasn't because he was super broken. Because we didn't know that at the time. Sorry, I didn't know that at the time. Maybe somebody else did, but... yeah, I'm going to start skipping through these. It's a little annoying. Well... yeah. And I believe that there's what we call an FRBT. But that's okay. I am not going to grab the BT just yet. Because I think there's free pulls on Dash and Titus. As you can see, I had him ready. I did not preemptively blue his armor, but I did use him a few times after he got it. So. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Good luck on your pulls, assuming that you are pulling, which most people probably are. Thank you. I already said that. Thank you for watching. This has been a pretty long video. I probably won't do this too much more often, especially since this one had, you know, 4 different characters to, you know, kind of go over. But I do appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments how your polls went and what you think of this particular format. Maybe you prefer the other videos for the when you pull content. Like I said, good luck, and I will see you next time. Take care.